Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Drunken Symposium. Here we bring in the unheard writer and have them read their latest work, Drunk. On this episode, we had the author of 2 unpublished novels, How to Pick a Fight with Dionysus and Woman, the Antichrist. His name is Christopher Todd.
A Walk in Paris Through Its Books by me. Somewhere between noon and 1, I, Christopher Todd, gathered my books and went for a walk. I live on the old university side of Paris. My apartment is over there, behind Jardin du Luxembourg. As I get closer to the park, the grotesque Montparnasse building sits off in the distance, ugly to my left. I don't think any of the characters or the authors I have in my satchel would like that building very much. Victor Hugo would have burned it down by now, or he would have written a 1,000-page epic based on it. He would have set fire to it with his words. Most of the book would have consisted of his critique and history of the building, and how he knew more about it than anyone else. 900 pages would be devoted to that. The last 100 would tell a story. What an asshole. We'll talk more about him when I get to Notre Dame. Approaching the park, I see the gate. The palace clock faces me. From this distance, it's the size of a dime. The circumference is growing as I walk closer. It's probably the size of a nickel by now, but I won't lift my thumb to check. Most of the leaves are off the trees and on the ground. A crew of men are blowing them toward a direction I'm unaware of. There doesn't seem to be an end in sight. The sound of the leaf blower makes me slightly pissed. One is raking. That noise is okay. Oh good, they shut it off. A jogger is running up from behind me. I can hear her breath and the sound of her shoes against the sandy dirt. I saw her coming when I entered the park. I moved to the right and let the runner breathe on by. It's a beautiful day in Paris. When the sun is out, the people are out too. Every chair in the garden seems to be taken. I'm not looking for a seat. But if I were to sit, I would rest over there by the pond. I'd sit to the right of it and face the Eiffel Tower. Right now, the only cloud in the sky is approaching the tip of its point. This is one of the best views of the tower. From here, I can't see all the tourists taking pictures in front of it. I can't see that iron beauty get reduced to a selfie where it will be placed on some form of social media, waiting for someone to hit the like button, giving it that idiot a slight drip of unauthentic dopamine. If it weren't for that structure, I believe Paris would be a lot less crowded. I apologize for the digression. It will probably happen again. Anyway, that's my favorite spot in the city. I just walked by it. But it's not the distance. It's not the distant view, the Eiffel Tower, that makes it so. No. It's the action that takes place in front of it. In front of that seat. When I sit there, I like to observe and write. In front of my journal, people walk in front of me. This way and that way, holding hands, tripping, kissing, laughing. I've even seen people cry. On the other end of this traffic is a perfect circular pond. If you've ever been to this park before, you've seen it. You can't miss it. It's where the children set sail their tiny boats. They run around the water, chasing them with their sticks. When they fall down, they get back up and continue to follow their boats. The noise of their happiness is probably one of the best sounds in the city. I have one more thing about that spot. There are only 2 kinds of people that set sail in that pond. Children and the old. I'm not really sure what that means, but there's something fascinating that I find about it. But there is something about it that I find fascinating. Maybe it's time. I'm standing in front of the palace now, looking up at the clock. I wonder what kind of courtly shenanigans have went on inside this building. I believe it belongs to the Senate now, so I'm sure the gossip and rumors of rumors have continued without ceasing. I'm reminded of the Princess de Clèves. She sits somewhere in my bag, spine first. She certainly didn't have one in this tale. I wish that I had Rochefoucauld's maxims with me. The 2 of them should never be separated. On the bookshelf, they should sit beside each other. In fact, they should be read alongside one another, like Kant and Hegel, American Psycho and Hamlet, The Birth of Tragedy and Antigone. For every situation that springs up in the Princess de Clèves, I'm sure Rochefoucauld has an aphorism for it. The coldness of women is a balance and burden they add to their beauty. See what I mean? That would be an outstanding comparative paper. I can imagine it now. going back and forth between aphorism and action, philosophy and situation, to the literary world and back to reflection, it would be an outstanding tennis match of pages. But there are too many characters to keep track of, and their heroine isn't much of a hero at all. This goes for most of the female characters in French literature. I won't mention any names, but Emma Bovary is a good example. A chime of some sort is resonating from the clock. The two girls beside me are taking pictures of one another. Right now, one of them poses for the camera. She's pointing to the clock and lifting one of her legs. Nowadays, everyone is a model. I'm not really sure what the significance of this pose is. Perhaps it's my cue to continue to walk. Oops. I started walking the wrong way. I need to head toward the Pantheon. I'm not going there as my destination, it's just a reference point. You'll never get lost in Paris if you have one of these. It's peak lunch hour. There isn't a hand without a baguette, cigarette, or cell phone. The couple sitting on the bench over there have their hands on other places. The smell of fertilizer coming from that flower bed reminds me of home. Long after I've left this city, I'm sure I'll see these flowers one day and they'll remind me of Paris. Maybe not. I'm nearing the exit of the park. The open gate is up ahead. I hear a handful of different languages. As I walk through them, I walk. The columns of the Pantheon stand to my right. Église... How do you say it? Église Saint...
Saint-Étienne-du-Mont?
Yeah. Is only a football field away. This area is a cesspool of students. It's as if there is a different college or university on every corner. I reach the end of the Pantheon and take a left at the church. The cobblestone road forms an S shape down the hill. To my left is a bar called the... I know I've asked you this before. What is the name of this bar? The Bombardier.
The Bombardier.
Wait. I've always wanted to get a drink there, but never have. The church steps to my right are the same steps used in the movie Midnight in Paris. On those steps, the main character takes a seat at midnight and is transported back in time to the 1920s. I've stumbled over to these steps many times before and waited for the clock to strike midnight. Nothing happens for me. But I usually sit there for a little while longer and finish the bottle I have in my hand. This 21st century Paris, I guess, is good enough for me. Aha, there it is. Église Saint-Benoît le...
Benoît le Bétourné.
Ouais, yeah.
Ouais, en fait.
I made it. Now where is that bastard Villon? He's in my satchel somewhere. I think I'll take him out and read one of his poems. I open my bag. Got it. Okay, I dropped it. An asshole just shoulder bumped me as he walked by. Of course, he continued on without missing a step. No harm, no foul. These situations are common in the city. I pick up Villon and dust him off. I'm not a big fan of poetry, but if I were to appreciate a poet, it would be him. Why? Excuse me. Because he was a thief, saint, sinner, debaucher, lover, and a brawler. He was an artist that lived in the world. Well, between banishments, of course, and not outside of it. Through his poetry, the reader watches him laugh, suffer, play, and pray. He hides nothing, not even the names of the individuals. Within his poetry, we also see a very lonely man, a lonely man who writes. The dynamic poet is revealed greatly in Debussy's Trois Ballades de François Villon. How was that? Each piece of music carries a different tone, just as Villon's poems do. In one ballad, he is suffering from having been cheated on by his girlfriend. The next adaptation is a prayer, and the third is about the diverse selection of women on the streets of Paris. Now, I wouldn't say that he was objectifying women, I'd say that he was subjectifying them. You know, I've been meaning to write a manifesto on this topic. For the sake of being a situationist, I think I'll leave Villon here. I will wonder how many people will notice him, leaning against the gate. How long will it take for someone to bend down and pick him up? Will they keep him, drop him, or put him back? If it were up to me, I'd just leave him be. As my eyes fix on the flying buttresses holding the church in place like a rib cage exposed, Notre Dame de Paris fidgets around in my satchel. Hugo wants to leap out and walk beside me along the Seine, spilling his vomit of knowledge about architecture and words. I please him and take the book out of the bag and put him under my arm. We walk the stairs and cross the bridge. I'm not slurring, officer. We walk the stairs and cross the bridge. Charlemagne is covered in pigeon shit. Gypsies are asking me if we speak English. I know Hugo didn't. I believe he met Charles Dickens at one point in time. I'm sure that was awkward, because I don't believe Dickens spoke French. The line is long to the entry of the sanctuary. Tourists of all colors and creeds raise their selfie sticks. I want to take a pair of bolt cutters and cut them all down, one by one. The selfie sticks, that is. I take a seat next to the entrance of the museum and burn some nicotine. What do you see, Hugo? Could you paint it with your brush using the same description in your words? Probably not. For a man who knew everything about history in the city, he certainly couldn't draw anything with such knowledge. In his drawings and paintings there is great space. And Notre Dame de Paris, I am boxed in your pages of interjections rather than your story. I'll talk more about that when we get to the sewers. The best thing you did with Notre Dame de Paris was imitate Shakespeare with meta-theater. I guess maybe I'm being too harsh. Okay. The way you measure time is brilliant. Sorry. I got some cigarette ash on you. I get the same image as you when I look at this building. I see layers and layers of rock that took centuries to build. The Gothic architecture seemed to cling to the left-behind Romanesque. I wonder what this place will look like in 100 years. And what would you think of it now? I think you would hate it. I think you would be pissed to see it reduced to the flash of a camera, idiots posing from beneath the bells. Let's get out of here before I put this cigarette out on the cover of your book. I'm too cheap to buy a ticket for the sewer tour, so I blended in with Bacchus students. I was drawn to the sound of my own language. I wait for the tour guide to begin to speak and branch off down one of the tunnels. Les Miserables is heavy in my bag. I feel like Jean Valjean carrying Marius. Supposedly, this epic is considered the Iliad of French culture, of French literature. It's also known that soldiers carried and read the book during the American Civil War. Can you imagine carrying that into battle? I guess you could use it as body armor, or cannon fodder. Only a few hundred pages out of over 2,000 are dedicated to story. Most of the pages are full of Hugo talking about himself and how he knows more about the history than reader or anyone else. It's a book of essays. I bet if you were to take a poll, most people have seen the musical rather than flip through the novel. That's because the musical focuses on the story. Can you imagine watching the play as Hugo had written it? Every few lines, Hugo would have to enter stage right, pause the action, and talk about his plethora of knowledge. He'd be the worst narrator ever to approach center stage. There is one thing I respect in this epic, and that's the sewer. Everyone's shit and waste flows down here, mixing into a single stream. The past floated through here. The present is now passing, and the future will have the same fate. I think I'll toss the rest of these books over this bridge. I open the mouth of my bag and hold it over the murky water. They fall. The Princess de Clèves, Notre Dame de Paris, Les Miserables. There. The past mixes with the present.